operation across the country. What do you hope things to look like, and what are you asking for the public?
Look, I just want people to look at the data on what this administration has done. You know, the number of public safety threats we removed from the streets across this country, that makes these communities safer. ICE has had an office here for decades. Before it was called INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service. This footprint will remain here, and they'll continue to do immigration enforcement here. But as President Trump has said from day one, we're going to prioritize the public safety threats. Again, but prioritization doesn't mean forget about everybody else. That means if you have a criminal alien here and non-criminal here, the criminal always comes first because he's the biggest threat to the communities. We're going to continue to force immigration law. But we'll get back to the footprint here, the normal footprint here. But there will be some security teams staying here, the QRFs, until we're assured that those agitators, incidents, either stay low or further decline. I'm not going to remove everybody out of the safety of our officers, but like I said, and Operation Metro Surge is ending. And in the next week, we're going to deploy the officers here in detail back to their home stations or other areas of the country that are needed. But we're going to continue to enforce immigration law. That's what the American people voted for. But it has to be a priority of criminals. And look, I hear all the hate about, you know, you should arrest everybody. Well, we are. But we're prioritizing those who are the biggest threat to our community. The rapists, the murderers, the child molesters. That's the right thing to do. But I'll say it again. President Trump made a promise of mass deportation, and that's what this country's going to get. But it's smart law enforcement to do target enforcement operations. Now, I've heard people attacking me using the word targeted. I sat for the last 2 months when I watched this operation, daily press briefs are talking about targeted Title VIII operations. Nothing changed, other than we're going to make sure they're targeted and make sure we know who we're going for, what their immigration record, what's their criminal history. That comes first. But enforcement of Title VIII is not going to end. If you're in this country legally, you're not off the table. And I think we're proving that if you look at the data.
Mr. Homan, just had a question about the final number of arrests you had and how many of those people arrested were those targeted security threats you were after?
I don't have that exact breakdown. I know we've made over 4,000 arrests here. That is something a local field office can supply. I don't have the exact breakdown. But I can tell you, since I've been on the ground, they've been target enforcement arrests. I believe there were target enforcement arrests before I got here. What I did is create one chain of commands where everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and integrate operation command centers. There were some issues here, and we addressed those issues. But I'm not going to sit here and say anybody did anything wrong, and that they were unprofessional. I'm going to say there's some issues here. We fixed those issues. We've had great success with this operation, and we're leaving Minnesota safer. The surge is leaving Minnesota safer, Minneapolis safer, because of the cooperation we got with the counties and the state and local law enforcement responding to our needs. I'll say it again. It's less of a sanctuary state for criminals.
Sorry to go a little off topic here, but can you confirm that CPD actually hit a party balloon instead of a drone with a laser during the incident in El Paso? And why wasn't that action coordinated with the FAA?
I have no information on that. It's out of my league.
So we're going to keep the questions to Minnesota, the topic. Go ahead.
Mr. Homan, can you specify how many county sheriffs, local jails have agreed to work with you and honor ICE detainers?
I have not met one county jail that says no to us. They want to work with us.
Okay, we have time for one more. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mr. Homan. You talked about this unprecedented level of cooperation between local officials and yourself. Can you explain more what is changed now in terms of that cooperation from before?
Several things have changed. First of all, when the agents were out doing operations and the agitators got a hand and posed a public safety threat, not just to the officers but the communities, law enforcement response has been sporadic at best. I think at what you've seen now, what you saw this past weekend, is law enforcement is responding to public safety needs quickly. And people were arrested for violating city ordinances as far as when unlawful assembly and so forth. they come to assist us to make sure our officers, the person we have in custody, leave that scene safely. You've seen it this weekend, and I'm happy that the local and state was there also, that responded, and we haven't seen any incidents of them not responding since we have these agreements in place now. As far as the jails, we got more cooperation, more jails than they had before we got here. And that's a good thing. We're having conversation with the state, and state already accepted our detainees, but we're moving further on our agreements with the state. So the cooperation we have here is going to keep this city safer. It's going to keep our agents safer. Arresting public safety threats in a jail just makes sense. If you look at, I was talking to my chief of staff this morning on the way over here. I see that most people on the other side, when I say the other side, I say that, this argument with Democrats versus Republicans, whatever. But most of the people, even Democrats, are saying they want public safety threats to be the focus. They think public safety threats, illegal aliens, should be addressed. But to say that and not let us into jail, you can't square that. I just noticed the governor of New York, my home state. I've heard her say that she believes public safety threat, illegal aliens should be the focus of ICE. But to have a press conference last week to lock us out of the jails and end 287G agreements, how do you square that? You can't. So again, prioritization of public safety threats don't mean we forget about everybody else. We're going to enforce the immigration law, and we're going to have a mass deportation. President Trump promised that, and we're committed to that. However, it shouldn't be a partisan issue that you arrest public safety threats in the safety and security of a jail. Releasing public safety threats back in the public is just stupid. And I've been arguing this for years. And I hope Congress takes action on sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. It makes sense. If you think about it, even the argument I hear, well, victims and witnesses of crime that are in the country illegally want to feel safe to come to law enforcement and to report those crimes without fearing that this law enforcement agency is working with ICE. That's a bunch of crap. Because victims and witnesses of crime don't want the bad guy released to the neighborhood either. It's ridiculous. We want access to the person that you chose, the local jurisdiction chose, to lock in a jail cell. And we have that cooperation here now. It's the right thing to do, and it makes this community safer. This community is safer because we arrested 4,000 illegal aliens in this, over 4,000 illegal aliens here. Many of them public safety threat, not all of them. As I said, we're going to force immigration law, but this community is much safer because of President Trump's leadership and the men and women standing on this stage.